Hello and welcome to the Realizing Resilience podcast. My name is Nate and I have been struggling to find my resilience lately. There have been some lapses in resilience as I have been renovating this house. So we purchased the house next door to our shop, which is very exciting. I knew there was a lot of work that needed to be done, but when I started to peel back some layers, I looked in the flooring. There was an enclosed porch that was probably built in like the 60s or 70s, and the house itself was built in 1905. And I saw, a little bit of rot, a little bit of old carpenter ant damage. Really didn't seem that bad. Peeled open the floor, and it was bad. It was really bad. It was rotten all the way through. The entire porch was framed on the soil, and it was just soaking wet, totally rotted away, full of ants. And I had to dig out that whole crawl space and create a crawl space, reframe. The entire porch was framed like 36 inches on center. It's supposed to be 16 inches on center. And it's just one of those things that just keeps peeling back the layers, pulling on the thread, and the entire thing unravels. And over the weekend, I was looking at it and just deciding, you know what? I should really just tear this thing down. But I have a renovation loan, which is a 203K renovation loan. And it's a unique loan product where you can get a portion of the construction costs covered, like rolled into the loan. But there are a lot of stipulations. You need to have a general contractor do a bunch of paperwork. You have to submit draw requests, have everything properly permitted, and they come out and inspect the work as it's being completed and will only send the money once everything is fully inspected and approved. And so you got to front the money up initially to get it all done, which is fine. It's all totally within reason. It's just that, there's a lot more than we anticipated, which, is a good test of resilience. This is like life in general. In another example, the other day I was running a load of laundry in my 3-family. So I own a 3-family in Worcester, and after the laundry was like halfway done, I heard a gurgling, and I looked in the bathroom, and there was water, like gross black water, all in the tub. It was bubbling up into the tub, and the toilet was starting to overflow, and it was a clog. And so, as any good landlord, I have my own drain snake, of course, and I went right into the basement, determined that it was in the main plumbing line, and so I went to town trying to snake it. Of course, when I pulled the cap off, a torrent of sewage came flooding out into my basement all over me, which, again, I kind of expect, and, just whatever, do what needs to be done. And it was like 9:30, 10 p.m., and I'm snaking this drain. It's a Harbor Freight electric drain snake, but it's a small one. It's 3/8 and only like 30 feet long. It wasn't long enough. I kept pulling out clumps of paper, and I was like, what the hell? I wasn't sure if they were baby wipes, which are like the Achilles heel of old cast iron piping, but it wasn't. You know what it was? It was like McDonald's napkins that one of my tenants will go and get a stack and use it as toilet paper because they can't afford toilet paper, which is a really sad thing. And you can't flush it. They're like wax coated, so they don't break down. And I pulled out clump after clump of these napkins covered in sewage, still couldn't get the clog out. So then the next morning at 6 a.m., I went straight to Home Depot and I rented a big auger snake, a much more industrious one, and brought it back and was able to unplug the drain. And that wasn't too bad. But just one of those things, and then as I'm snaking away, I wasn't able to be there in the morning to get the crew set up. I get a phone call at 7:30 a.m. when they first get to the job site, and they're like, "Hey boss, we got a problem here. We hit a wire. It's a live wire underground while installing this patio." The client called me before I could call her, and she was like, "Hey, they hit a wire and haven't said anything," and was pretty upset about it, and like was super nervous about the repercussions. And I alleviated that with her. The wire fed the garage, so it was a 110 volt, a regular line, and the pipe, the conduit that it was ran through was totally corroded and like collapsed. And so I called my electrician, and, in our contracts, it says quite explicitly that any unmarked utilities or power lines we are not liable for. And we had DigSafe come out, and it wasn't a utility serviced line. It was just a private line from the house to the garage, which aren't marked. And yeah, you just never know. You never know when digging. But just a bunch of good opportunities to say, okay, I'm going to handle this. I find my resolve, not get frustrated, don't blame anybody in particular. That's always a hard thing, but it's like, it's an ego driven perspective, and people, it's not, whether it's negligence or it's, I'm sure in almost every circumstance, it's not intentional. It's not malicious, right? And so recognizing when there are problems that you have to overcome, and if it's due to somebody else's actions, was it strictly negligence or was it maliciousness, right? And very rarely is it malicious. And if it's just negligence, then there's like a conversation to be had, but it's not a chastising. It's like, hey, there's a lesson to be learned here. Tell me about it. And hopefully, it's obvious, and you don't need to like beat it into them, because it's like, yeah, I messed up. There's a problem here. And in those two examples, really, no one is to blame. You have to dig, you hit a wire. I mean, you can't hand dig. You're not going to tiptoe around it, whatever it may be. So that was something that I'm happy to, I'm still waiting for the bill from the electrician, but I'm curious, if, even though in our contract it says we're not liable, I'm totally willing to cover a portion of the cost just as a show of good faith. And I think that's a reasonable and responsible thing to do. And for the plumbing, like, I could call a plumber. The last time I called a plumber to unclog a drain, it was like $650 versus renting. It was $42 to rent a drain snake, and it took me 1 hour to drain it, to clean off that drain. So just these things, these decisions that we make, and, recognizing too, like, this is what I signed up for. I decided to be a landlord. I decided to be a business owner. This is part of the gig. And so setting your expectations is so important when it comes to building resilience. And I think that there's a lot to be said there, like in so many ways, in so many different aspects of life. The root of all disappointment is a lack of met expectations. The root of all disappointment is because something turned out differently than you anticipated. And so part of design and strategy, thinking through what could go wrong and being prepared for it, and like, life happens, it sucks, but that's resilience, baby. That's like the name of the game, is thinking through, okay, how are all the ways that this could go wrong? And if this or this happens, what am I going to do about it? And how am I going to feel about it? I don't have to be happy and excited about it, but I can have some sense of like, okay, like stoic resolve to say, let's do what needs to be done. And so that's just a relevant lesson, I feel, that I wanted to talk about, because it's been a lot. It's been pretty stressful around here. And, something about stress is that it's like the number one killer in the world. Stress is so bad. The root of all, like, so much like when your immune system is compromised because of high cortisol, because of stress. I mean, the science is very clear. It's bad. Stress is really bad for you. And so I have this like mindset of preventing it, avoiding stress, which doesn't mean avoiding risk or avoiding difficult situations. It's managing my inner dialogue. It's managing my psychology to prepare for it and to steel my nerves, because life is stressful, like by nature. And you can decide to live a stressful life that is usually more rewarding than a relaxed life. You can choose to live a life with no stress, and that can take many forms. There's like, the minimalist in monk kind of approach to it, where it's, you don't have anything, you don't need anything, you're content, and you have no stress, which is a very strong mental state to be in. Or you can be, yeah, gosh, there's so many different ways, but no matter what, and you can consider, just for comparison's sake, to recognize that money's not the answer. Difficulty isn't the answer. A lot of people have very cushy lives. Maybe they inherited a lot of money. They live in a great neighborhood, in a great house. They had great parents. Everything, the stage was set for them. Like, you have a successful life laid out in front of you. And they're still depressed and anxious and stressed out, or addicted to drugs, or have their vices, And in the same vein, there could be people who grew up with nothing and had really abusive households and had to work for everything that they need. And through that struggle and that stress, created more resilience, more respect, and this self-worth. So it's tricky. Human psychology is tricky. And what we contribute, what we do with our time here is so important. And all of these things tie back together. I choose stress. I choose a stressful scenario that I will manage effectively. And of course, there's risk that it'll bleed out every now and then. Every now and then, I'll have a little bit of a breakdown and just be like, God, this sucks, and like, I'll take some time. I'll take my 15 minutes to mope around and have whatever vice, to drink a beer at the end of a day. And I'm stressed out. And I'm just like, God, I just want to sit on the couch and watch TV and drink a beer. But that's a conscious decision. It's scary and it's dangerous when that becomes unconscious. When you don't think about it, you don't really consider it. And next thing you know, it's been 10 years, and every single day after work, you go home and you drink 6 beers. Now you have a problem. So it's a routine, it's a habit, it's a ritual of recognizing your stresses, recognizing how you are responding mentally, psychologically, and physically. And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to mope and just be stressed? Or are you going to know yourself well enough to say, hey, I'm not going to, all I want to do is stop at McDonald's on my way home and get a burger and then go home, drink a beer, and sit on the couch? And recognize that pattern and that desire and replace it. Swap that feeling of like, I just need something, and go to the gym. Exercise. And then usually there's like this stack effect with habits and rituals that end up feeding off each other. It's like you make one bad decision and you get that candy bar, and then you get a hamburger, and then, well, you've already spent your willpower for the day. So now you just let it all out and become consumed by all the vices. Or the opposite. You say, I'm going to go to the gym first. Maybe I'll have a beer later. Maybe I'll get that burger, but I'm going to go to the gym first. Then you go to the gym, and then you feel great, and you feel better about yourself, and you're proud of yourself, and you say, I'm not going to go get a burger. I'm going to have a salad when I get home. I'm going to have a protein shake, and then I'm not going to sit on the couch and watch TV. I'm going to like do my laundry and like be productive. And like that trickle effect of positive habits lead to positive psychology. And then it's just this rinse and repeat, this cycle. And so much of our lives are cycles and rituals and routines, and nature's a great indicator of that. Like the world operates in cycles, and knowing how you respond and how you adapt in whatever phase of life, whatever season of life you're in, and that can be on a small scale or a large scale. But boy, it's exciting to frame things that way. And then tie it all back to design your life, to design your viewpoint in the world. Like, how do you see the world, and how do you see yourself in it, and what do you want to contribute? And like, do that consciously. Like, make a decision and say, this is who I want to be, and this is what I want to do. And I feel like so many people don't do that. And it's unfortunate, because with a little bit, it doesn't take all that much effort, like a little bit of effort of self-reflection, journaling about it, finding a good like prompt to say like, who are you and what do you want out of life and what do you do and how do you respond in difficult situations, and making that conscious preemptive effort to plant that seed within your mind and to design your mindset in such a way that benefits you the most. Because otherwise you're running on default. And default in our society is what the media, what the news, what your peers tell you. We are so susceptible as a species to just blending in and just doing what our neighbor does because that's just what it's just always been. You've never considered anything differently. You've never really thought about it. Sure, I'm going to go to school so I can get a good job, so I can buy a house and have kids and have a family and my white picket fence and move out of my hometown and just move to the city and just do what everybody else is doing because that's just the way it is. And so my call to action today, my challenge is to just consider how you respond, what you're doing in life, and when faced with difficult things and when stress presents itself, how do you handle it? And make a conscious effort to say, next time I'm stressed, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw a kettlebell around for a little bit. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to listen to some good music and go for a walk. Like, find those rituals, find those habits that you personally would help. Everybody has their own personal way of coping and managing stress. And it's so important to take that pause and to eliminate that stress, feel it, recognize it, understand it, and move on from it. And know that if you let that stress linger, it becomes chronic, and chronic stress is chronic disease. So consciously design your mindset, design your life, live a life without stress, and be proud of who you are. Have that sense of awe and curiosity about yourself and the world around you, and just live a resilient life. And as always, keep growing.